My mother-in-law was a funny and cool woman. She and my wife were really close, and sadly, she passed away when our son was about 4 months old. Flash forward a few years. We live in an old 1930s era craftsman house in Pasadena, California. Our son is about 3. I was giving him a bath one night, and he starts looking over my shoulder, not at random stuff, but at something. A moment passes, and he asks me why Grandma calls Mommy a funny name. Long pause. I asked him what he meant, thinking he was talking about my mom. Then he says, why does Grandma call Mommy this name, which was my mother-in-law's nickname for my wife. I was really set back by this. My wife and I had never used the nickname. It was just what her mom called her since she was a baby. I asked him where he heard that. His reply, the farmer told me. I asked him who the farmer was, and he replied, his friend. I tell my wife the story later, and she's of course reduced to tears over the whole nickname thing. We both know there is no way for him to know this, and we just kind of marvel at it. Flash forward to the next weekend, and my son is playing in his room. My wife is at work, and I'm at home. I hear him start talking like he's having a conversation, saying things like yes, no, and I don't know that. Then some laughing. I go to his room and ask him what he's doing, and he says he's playing. I ask with who? He says, the farmer. At this point, I'm already thinking about the fucking Exorcist movie and Captain Howdy. It's a little unsettling. I ask him where the farmer is. He says he left when I came in. So when my wife gets home, I tell her this, and now she's just as weirded out as I am. We have no idea what to do, and figure if it happens again, we'll do something. A few days later, in the middle of the night, we both overhear our son saying the following. Grandma says you and I can't be friends anymore. My wife and I go and check on him, both of us a little freaked out. He's just sitting up in bed. I ask him if he's okay, and he says yeah. Grandma says I can't play with the farmer anymore. He never once mentioned the farmer again. Not ever. He's 13 now and doesn't remember any of it. Something found me after a car accident, and I don't know what it was. During our drive home from a family trip, our car hit black ice on a curve that sent us rolling. That day, I didn't wear my seatbelt, and I was ejected out of the car by breaking through my window, using my face as a ram. From my perspective, 1 second I'm in a car. The next thing I know, I'm laying in some bushes. I try getting up, but I'm stopped by an intense pain in my shoulder, which was caused by a broken collarbone. Honestly, I don't know if I had passed out or just went to sleep, but at this point I lost consciousness. After an unknown amount of time to me, through my closed eyes, I can see a flashlight shine over me. My dad found me, lifted me to my feet with ease, and pushed me towards where the totaled car and my family was. A distinct detail I remember about this moment is how firm the hands were. Here's the unexplainable part. After talking to my brother, I realized something. My dad never actually went looking for me. My mom was badly damaged, and no one had any idea what happened to me. They actually assumed the worst and thought I was dead under the car. We didn't even have a flashlight. I don't know who or what found me lying there, but something did. I distinctly remember the light shining over me before firm, strong hands lifted me up like I was paper. Before talking about it, I always just assumed it had been my dad. I post this every now and then, and just kinda hoping an answer finds it. My collarbone healed, so it's protruding a bit, and it stuck as a permanent reminder of that day. I was watching The Exorcist when I was 16, and my grandmother came home and told me to turn it off because it was the last movie my grandfather watched the night he died. About 20 minutes later, I saw him rocking in the chair next to my couch, and no matter how many damn times I pulled the blanket over my head, he stayed there until he looked at me, smiled, and vanished. I still can't watch that movie to this day without freaking out about it, and that was 18 years ago. A few weeks ago, my friends and I were spending the night at her house since she was alone all weekend in a big house and terrified of it, for lack of better words, as her parents left somewhere for the weekend. At first, I thought it wouldn't be that bad. 3 teenage girls having the house to themselves all weekend, access to food and Netflix. The first night, around 10 p.m., we were upstairs and completely alone. The basement door downstairs slammed so loud that the friend who owns the house locked herself in the bathroom, profusely apologizing for dragging us into this mess, and crying. Fast forward to roughly midnight. We heard an insane amount of whispering emerging from the corner of her dining room, and the closer we got to that spot, the louder it became, and violently the voices got. I really had to pee right after this incident and went to the bathroom. The lights flickered and the bathroom sink tap started gushing out water like no tomorrow. I was so done with this house showing us who's boss. The next day, we came downstairs to the living room, completely trashed. I'm talking about the coffee table flipped, the papers on said table thrown about the room, random water spots everywhere. It was just a mess. Needless to say, she and her parents are moving next week. Still in the same area, just away from that house of horrors. The first incident was on a weekend. My dad and I were sitting in the living room watching NASCAR, and during a commercial break he asked me to get him a beer. Unfortunately for me, he kept his beer down in the basement in this little mini fridge, and I was already kind of scared to go down there. Not wanting to upset him by telling him no, I went for it anyway. Before I even made it to the steps, I was already getting that feeling that I shouldn't go any further, and that I should immediately turn right around, but I kept going on. As I got to the basement steps, that fear continued to grow and grow. You know that feeling you get when you can just tell that someone is staring at you? Your spine gets kind of tingly, and you have this overwhelming feeling to look in that direction. That's exactly what I was experiencing tenfold. When I finally reached the bottom of the steps, I was almost completely paralyzed with fear. I slowly turned my head to the left towards where the open dirt area was and said, "Hello?" As soon as I said that, 2 glowing red orb things emerged from the dark part. I'd say they were eyes, but I can't be for sure. I didn't study them long enough before I ran up the steps as fast as I could. My dad must have heard me running around and met me in the hallway, and asked what was going on. I told him about what I saw, and he immediately headed down there. I think he might have thought it was an animal or something, but after a few minutes, he emerged with a beer in hand and telling me it was nothing. The second event took place a year, maybe a year and a half later. It was during the summer, and my family and I were outside. I had to use the bathroom and headed inside using the front door, as I had refused to use the side door since that previous event. When I went to go back outside, though, I had the thought that I'd try and be brave and face my fear. I headed towards the side door, sat at the top of the basement steps, and waited. It didn't take long for me to get those same feelings all over again. I shouldn't be there, someone was watching me, I needed to leave immediately. I was truly tired of the fear, though. I wanted to be brave and face whatever threat was down there. So I stayed. It didn't take long for me to run through, because as soon as I had made that determination, I saw a shadow paint across the wall opposite the handrail. It was human, looked male, and seemed extremely large. No fine details. Again, not enough time, as I immediately bolted out the door. I told my dad about it. This time he seemed a bit more concerned. I didn't follow him into the house, but I did hear him racking his gun before he descended down. Just like last time, though, he emerged, nothing to be found. We moved into a new house a few months ago. As we were in the process of purchasing the house, the renter who was living in it died unexpectedly of natural causes in his mid-40s. He died right in the middle of the living room. Shortly after we moved into the house, and almost immediately our 2-year-old daughter starts talking about the ghost that lives in our house. Now let's be real here. She is 2, and 2-year-olds are very impressionable. Halloween had recently passed, and she had this Halloween-themed picture book that she loved to read. So it's entirely possible that all of this talk of ghosts was just coming from looking through that book on a regular basis. Still, she was always telling me that the ghost was in her playhouse in the basement, or that the ghost was on the stairs, or that the ghost was standing in the corner. She never seemed to be afraid of the ghost, and considered him to be her friend, so I wasn't all that concerned even if there really was a ghost haunting our house. If he's a nice and helpful ghost, it could certainly be a lot worse. I would often tell the ghost that he was welcome to stay if he wanted to, but he was also welcome to go if that would make him happier. I was about 30-70 on the ghost being real and she could see him and talk to him versus the ghost being just her imagination fueled by her Halloween book. Until one day, when we were going out to the car to go to daycare in the morning. It was still dark out and rainy. My daughter told me that the ghost was on the back deck, and she told me that today was the ghost's birthday and she wanted to sing him happy birthday. Once again, I mostly disregarded what she was saying, as she is birthday obsessed and has, in the past, made us sing happy birthday to Mickey Mouse, a bowl of fruit snacks, and to the bathroom. So we sang and wished the ghost a happy birthday and went on with our lives. Later that day, out of pure curiosity, I looked up the obituary of the man who had died in our house, and wouldn't you know it, it was his birthday. When I was maybe 6 or 7, I was staying the night at my grandparents' house. I was on the couch trying to sleep when I heard whispering. They had a painting of my aunt hanging on the wall in the living room, and it was talking to me. Nothing creepy though. Asking me if I was behaving, and typical aunt talk. She tells me to wake my grandfather up because she needs to talk to him. I did, and when he realized she wasn't there, he began scolding me. In between threats and insults, he noticed someone moving outside the window. He grabbed his pistol and then told me to stay in the room with my grandmother. A minute or two later, we hear a gunshot. Turns out there is a prison for young adults about 20 miles from where they live. 3 of them killed a guard and escaped. They were sizing the house up to take his truck and whatever else they could, but he saw them first. He ended up shooting one of them in the shoulder. I have no idea why that picture was talking to me. They've never experienced ghosts before or since that day. I grew up on the central coast of California, and my family would frequently visit Big Sur for camping, hiking, or just hanging out and having lunch at one of the restaurants. I must have been about 11, old enough to visit the bathroom independently, but still rather new to the freedom of walking around somewhere that wasn't my neighborhood or the woods alone. I went into the bathroom at a restaurant called the River Inn, and there were 3 stalls, 1 handicapped and 2 regular. All but one of the stalls, a regular one, were taken. I distinctly remember looking under the doors for feet, because I was a little kid and for whatever reason preferred the handicapped stall. I saw no feet, but the doors were locked. Whatever. I went into the one open stall. There was a huge squid in the toilet. Like, the body had to be at least a foot long, plus tentacles coiled around the inside of the toilet bowl. It totally filled the available space. Cloudy, dead squid eyes gazing up at me from the pooper. I ran out of the bathroom in horror, told nobody, and held my pee for the 45-minute drive home. What the fuck was that squid doing there? All I can surmise is it was a line cook prank in an area that ubiquitously has squid on the menu. 25 years later, that terror toilet squid still haunts